the first question is how to actually incorporate this practice of wisdom in the college or school in modern society. And the second question by Raymond is about whether our society is really losing wisdom, and then whether is there a way to gauge the kind of how bad our situation is at the moment. So to think about the first, how should we incorporate the wisdom? This is a conference on wisdom-oriented education. But though my approach is that what I try to say in my presentation is really to think the critical approach to wisdom itself. So when we say that how should we incorporate wisdom in the education, the assumption is that we know what wisdom is. So we want to kind of incorporate it in the education. But I would suggest that we should really get to the critical approach to wisdom. In other words, think about wisdom from different perspectives. So the bringing attention to wisdom itself can be education. In other words, so in my presentation, I try to demonstrate Buddhist wisdom or the comparison of Buddhist wisdom with the Western perspective, and even the wisdom in the data science. So think about wisdom from different perspective, and then that can be itself an education of wisdom-oriented education. So instead of taken for granted of the wisdom itself, doing what is called the critical approach to wisdom. And then if it gets a little bit serious, if you are really serious, what we need is really curriculum change, which is a huge issue. In other words, we need to create more of courses that we can teach students wisdom rather than knowledge or data. But that will require a certain kind of curriculum change. But in the US, where I teach, that we have been doing what is called decolonizing the curriculum. The idea is that the curriculum itself has been so much dominated by Western things. We would like to decolonize, like a colonial experience, decolonize curriculum so then we can incorporate a lot of different perspectives. The wisdom-oriented the education should approach something like that. So look at the current curriculum and see how we can really remove some of the courses and then add courses that are related to wisdom, by which I mean courses related to humanities teaching, and then obviously Buddhist teaching, but then critical approach to wisdom. And at the same time, I see that among the practitioners, especially in the US, African American practitioners, their practice of Buddhism is really incorporating wisdom itself. So at the beginning of my presentation, I talk about this racism in America. And these African Americans in the US, they've been suffering for over 400 years of the racism in the US. And these African American Buddhist practitioners, they take meditation as a way to overcoming this trauma. And so then not just to keep quiet, but then by doing that, they can challenge the racist society. So they have this slogan saying that sitting together, so then standing together. So in other words, sitting together, doing the meditation together, so then we can stand up against racism. Because of this 400 years racism, a lot of African Americans have a lot of anger, and this anger kind of exploded as a violence, which doesn't help anybody. But these African American practitioners, they say they know the problem, so they try to meditate so then they can calm down themselves, so then they can kind of create the kind of power to resist racist America. So in other words, this kind of practice itself is really wisdom-based kind of practice, right? So this their practice of meditation help them to wisely get through this situation. So we have this kind of examples. And in response to Raymond's idea, whether we are too much in a negative situation, well, I think each generation has their problem. Obviously, some generation is worse than others. But I think that, there is no obviously objective way of gauging how bad we are, right, in terms of wisdom and so on and so forth. But In a way, you can see both sides. If you look at American society, on the one hand, it is the capitalistic kind of the income gap is become wider, and smart people are not become wiser, perhaps they became smarter because we have a smartphone, smart city, smart car, all these smart thing, but that doesn't it does make us wiser. That is an issue. But the social media also help us to kind of bring people together, and then things like that. And also, if I look at my students, about 20 years ago, 20 some years ago, when I taught Buddhism, I have to ask the students, how many students heard about the expression Buddhism? Nowadays, you have a lot of students who practice Buddhism or who know somebody who practices Buddhism. And then students are aware that just focusing on the West is not right. Focusing on man is not right. All this kind of awareness is increasing. So in a way, there is a positive signs as much as negative signs. So instead of thinking of just a kind of negative signs and we are losing our wisdom, just trying to get to the bottom of it, what are the things that make us lose wisdom, and how we kind of turning the current so that we can use what we have is what we have, right? So everything is empty from Buddhist perspective. Social media is neither good nor bad. It is really depending on how we use it. And I think that our situation is like that too. There are a lot of people and education system which is trying to be more fair to many people, whereas also the discrimination and racism and things are going on. So I think it is a kind of how we approach issues, and that is again the very kind of issue of wisdom. Thank you.